hey, never mind too many sets being released and the game having too many cards, Yu-Gi-Oh! Has another problem.
The Dark Magician.
So what is this problem, you might ask? Well, I'm gonna cut to the chase. There's too many degenerate cards. More specifically, cards that just do things that don't let you play the game and are played in decks that just don't let you play the game. Yu-Gi-Oh! Seems to have evolved to a point where there's just too many decks now that just don't let you play. OTK decks, FTK decks, lockdown decks, or if we're going for the subcategory of lockdown, just control and stun. And there weren't even that many of these, like, way back in the day, like, before synchros existed. And then, since synchro era began, as time went on, we just got more and more of these, and no matter how much these decks get hit, there's just too many degenerate cards now. And it's evolved to a point where people just seem more interested in just ending games before they've even started. Like whether it's going for an OTK or an FTK, winning turn 1 before the opponent had a chance to play, or making a board of negates, floodgates, disruptions, or all of the above, or 2 or 3 of the above. And it's just ridiculous. It just gives off a sense that they just only care about winning rather than playing for the fun of it. Now, I know in tournaments winning it is the idea, but what's really the point if no one's having fun? And I hate how this is justified when they say, oh, well, OTKing and locking down decks is just how the game is played now. Like, no, it's really not. Like, if you seriously think it is, you're sadly mistaken and have the wrong idea about the game. Now, I'm not saying, of course, that there shouldn't ever be a meta, so yeah, don't get me wrong on this, like, seriously don't, because I'm sick and tired of people taking what I say the wrong way. I'm by no means saying there shouldn't ever be a competitive side, or there shouldn't ever be a meta. I'm just saying that playing cards that don't let other people play is too much and taking it too far. This is a game, after all. Games are supposed to be fun. I mean, the idea of a game is that you play it for the fun of it. It's not about trying desperately to win all the time and be the best and just do whatever it takes to win, even going as far as playing cards that don't let other people play. It's ridiculous. I mean, I know that's what the game seems to be, or how people think the game is played that way, but the question is, why? Why does it have to be this way? It's just too much, and it's got out of hand. Like, what is so wrong with playing a fair, balanced and evenly matched game with no Storly burn or deck out decks, no OTK and FTK deck or deck strategies, no negates, no floodgates, no disruptions that are so disruptive that it stops the opponent from being able to play, and no bullshit hand traps, what more specifically Ash, Droll, Dimension Shifter, Cyframe Gamma, DD Crow, just none of that bullshit. Just a fair, balanced and evenly matched game where both players have a fair and equal chance of winning and can actually play the game and, properly have some fun. What is so wrong with that? Nothing. That's what. That's how it was in the beginning, and for the most part it was how it was in pre-synchro era. Alright, yeah, it wasn't perfect. Priority was annoying, and so was the likes of Stein OTK, Demise OTK, Yatalok Dark World Monarchs. None of these things should ever have been a thing, but other than that, the game was just so much better back then, and it was a lot more enjoyable. Whoever goes first could still draw. It was just easier to play. There were less complex rules. It was just generally more fun. Fusions were the only extra deck monster in existence, and the extra deck was still called the Fusion deck, and there was no limit, which was a joy for us Elemental Hero players. But then Glads came into the game, which gave us the first Dark Bribe on legs, and that proved to be really annoying, particularly in the early 5Ds era. But then, of course, everything changed when synchros came into the game. Now, I'm not saying I hate synchros, at least not all of them, but just too much changed since then. Not just with new summoning mechanics, but just the fact that over the years we just got more and more OTK and lockdown decks, and there was only so much the ban list did. In fact, now it's got to a point where the ban list just does nothing. It's like either decks and cards that should be hit don't get hit, or even if they do, they just don't get hit enough, and even if they do, it doesn't matter, because something equally as annoying, or even worse, just comes along and starts the whole cycle again. And it does make me wonder what the point even is in having a ban list if we're always going to have degenerate, unfair cards and decks that just ruin the game. And it's got to a point where people are just either quitting the game outright, or they just don't want to play current format Yu-Gi-Oh anymore, or in my case, they just don't want to play in tournaments anymore. OTK, FTK decks, negates, floodgates, and the bullshit hand traps that I mentioned earlier have just made the game annoying, boring, and stale. It's just not the same anymore. And it just annoys me when people just don't see a problem with this, and they think they can justify all this bullshit, like saying, oh, well, negates, floodgates, and Ash are needed to stop OTK and other lockdown decks. But what would have been even better is just hitting those decks, to a point where they can't OTK, can't FTK, or can't lock down the opponent's deck in some way or another. You know, why should everyone else suffer? And as I said, there's just been more and more of these, and it's just got to a point where the game just isn't the same anymore, and still hasn't been the same since pre-synchro era. In fact, how can anyone prefer like 5D's era or modern Yu-Gi-Oh over like original series and GX era, and just disregard it and say old Yu-Gi-Oh is too slow? Like, I call bullshit. Old Yu-Gi-Oh is not too slow. Modern Yu-Gi-Oh is too fast. In fact, it's been too fast since the 5Ds era. Alright, I mean, it wasn't as fast in 5D's era as it was now, but it's still too fast. And it's been hard to keep up, you know? It doesn't help that additional summoning mechanics changed things too much. Although Xyz's didn't really change anything that much, I feel, because they weren't much different from synchros when they first came out, but then everything really changed too much when pendulums and links came into the game, and not for the better. Like, they're just ridiculously overpowered summoning mechanics that no one asked for, along with a rule that no one asked for. Getting rid of, just changing the first turn rules to where whoever goes first can't draw. Like, even to this day, I don't know why Konami did that. I mean, all I've heard is people thinking it's perfectly fine, and that Magic the Gathering have had that rule for years, but I don't give a shit if Magic the Gathering have had this rule for years. Like, this is Yu-Gi-Oh!, not Magic the Gathering. They have nothing to do with each other. Stop trying to change one card game into another. Like, seriously, this rule is bullshit. I've learned to live with it, but it's still bullshit, because it means whoever goes first is at an unfair disadvantage in terms of card numbers that they can start with. I mean, alright, yeah, if you have a really consistent deck it doesn't matter, but still, it can be a problem for decks that aren't as strong as others. But yeah, going back to pendulums, I mean, it was just ridiculous. They were just too overwhelming, especially since no matter what I do to destroy them, they just keep coming back. Like, it was bad enough when Grapha and Archlord Christia did this every time I destroyed them. I mean, yeah, they were nerfed by Master Rule 4, but that didn't really make a difference. Well, not that much anyway. It did to some, but regardless of the Master Rule, just Pendulum Magician and Endymion just then became the most overpowered pendulum decks in the game, regardless of the Master Rule, and became among two of my top 20 most hated decks of all time, because all either deck ever does is OTK and make a board of negates and just stop the opponent playing. And they played parts in me quitting tournaments, just outright. But yeah, links were definitely a mistake. I mean, even if you don't agree with me about pendulums, links were definitely a mistake. I mean, a mechanic and a master rule that no one asked for, and it just felt like we were force-fed this summoning mechanic if we wanted to play certain decks the way we wanted to still. And it just ruined decks focused on fusions, synchros and exceeses. And the interesting thing was they were brought in to slow down the game, but they didn't slow down shit. They just caused more problems and solved absolutely nothing. Because we were still getting OTK and lockdown decks, and a bunch of other degenerate cards. Plus there was a rise in FTK decks, like back in 2018. But they solved nothing. I mean, yeah, those FTKs were hits, well, except for Bone Tower deck. I hate my Akashis because of Bone Tower. Could have at least banned the Bone Tower at that point. But no, like I said, Konami doesn't always hit cards and decks that should be hit. I mean, yeah, they did somewhat fix the master rules so that now fusion, synchros and exceeds can be freely played in the main monster zone, but you know, the damage was already done. Yeah, honestly, the only two rule changes that I welcomed over the last 15 years were being allowed to side deck extra monsters, which was cool, and getting rid of priority just outright. I mean, like, getting rid of priority is something I will forever be thankful for, but it should never have been a thing in the first place. It was too awkward, it was too confusing, and it was just bullshit that monsters like Judgment Dragon, Dark Arm Dragon, or BLS could still activate their effects even if they're about to be blown off the field by the likes of Bottomless or Torrential. Like, how was this even fair? So, but yeah, the extra additional summoning mechanics, you know, I can live with and have learned to live with, but just having too many degenerate cards that don't let anyone play and nothing being done about them, it's just too much. I wish there could just be a purge of these degenerate cards so we can just go back to basics and just have more games that can actually go beyond turn 2 or 3. Now, I know a lot of people will agree with me on this, but I just think the game was perfectly fine the way it was before synchros came into the game. Like, that was my era. Like, and you know, Konami and Kazuki Takahashi, like, God rest his soul, like, they had a great thing going. It was just alright. It wasn't 100% perfect, but like, it was just great. It was perfect in, well, my own little way and other people's own little way. I mean, I'm not the only one who thinks this. I mean, yeah, you could argue that without synchros, exceeses, pendulums and links, the game would get boring, but, well, that's a matter of opinion. I strongly disagree. Because, like I said, the game was just much more enjoyable, like pre-synchro. And original series era, of course, was what got old school duelists like myself into the game. But yeah, even if people do get bored of the way it is, if there's no other extra like summoning mechanics, I'd much rather it was that way than have all the degenerate bullshit that we have today. But like I said, because of this degenerate bullshit, people have either just quit the game outright and have no interest in it, or just don't want to play current formats. And saying something like, "Oh, deal with it" or "don't play" is not helping. Because people will quit because of the way it is, or because some insensitive sod has said deal with it or don't play. I mean, it's not helpful when someone's just in a rut or a slump and feeling burnt out. And of course they will end up quitting. And then what? There'll be hardly anyone left to play current format Yu-Gi-Oh! With. And then everyone will just be more interested in playing Pokemon, Digimon, Magic the Gathering, Cardfight Vanguard, or Lorcana. And that just won't be good for the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! Just losing all these players. I mean, I know not everyone will outright quit, but as time goes on, there'll just be drops in players because of just the way things are. Or if not that, then the fact that cards and decks are just too expensive. It's not even just current formats, but just other kinds of formats just seem unappealing. It's because of degenerate, annoying decks and cards from days of old that I don't want to do GOAT format or Edison format tournaments anymore, although that doesn't have anything to do with current format Yu-Gi-Oh, but it's similar. And then there's 2.5, where for some reason some annoying cards and decks are banned, but not others. Like Trap Tricks and Naturias and Invokes. I mean, like, why they're allowed in 2.5 is just beyond me. And now it's got to the point where, where I might not want to continue even playing in the minor league, which is supposed to be a chilled out kind of tournament, and yet just annoying cards and decks that don't let anyone play still get played, and it just sort of defeats the whole point and the spirit of the minor league. This is supposed to be a chilled tournament, or format rather, with chilled decks. I mean, there's nothing chilled about the likes of Ash Blossom, Sky Striker, Dinomorphia, and Exosister. It's just very off-putting, and it's not fair on everyone else. Okay, there is something additional here that I wanted to put in because I completely forgot to do it. Now, the topic of chilled decks has come up lately, and people have said, oh, well, there's a difference of opinion, there's debate about what's considered chilled and what's considered jank, and or they've said define chilled. Well, what is actually considered a chilled deck is literally anything that doesn't do things that don't let anyone play the game. More specifically, decks that are not considered chilled are literally these decks. So yeah, pause and have a read of them. Now, yeah, pretty much, well, almost all of these are all the decks that I hate. Now, regarding the last four, Exosisters, Dynamorphia, Labyrinth and Purdy, I'm not saying I hate these decks, well, except for Dynamorphia Wrexham, yeah, I actually, well, at the very least, I'm okay with Labyrinth, and I actually do like Purdy's, but I'm just saying that those four are decks that people would not consider chilled, as yeah, there are players who don't like playing against them. But all the other decks listed are just irritating, bullshit, unfair decks that I, for one, wish never existed. Now, you might question my hatred on these, but, well, they're just really not chilled decks. I'm sure someone's going to... I mean, you could probably ask, oh, what's wrong with this deck? What's wrong with that deck? And, well, my response will be, what's right with this deck and or that deck? I mean, if you question my hatred on any of the decks that I've put numbers next to, and Unchained, you have no idea how much pain and suffering all these decks have put me through, and a lot of them played a part in me not wanting to play in tournaments anymore. Yeah, I would say anything that's not on this list is a chilled deck. That's all I'm saying. I know someone will say, oh, but you can still play past format games and speed duel games and play Yu-Gi-Oh! The way you want. Yeah, I know that, I am aware of that, but that's not the point. I mean, the point is, there's just things about current format Yu-Gi-Oh! That are just really annoying and make it off-putting for people. And like I said, it makes them quit the game, quit current format Yu-Gi-Oh! Or just not want to play in normal current format tournaments. Well, some people who watch this video just probably won't agree with me and will probably disregard what I said. Not that I care what they think, but before you give me shit over anything I've said in this video, think about this for a minute. How do you expect anyone to stay interested and excited about the game when you have all this degenerate bullshit that stops anyone from being able to play? How do you expect new players to get into the game? how do you expect former players to get back into the game? Like, when you have the degenerate bullshit that we have right now. Just think about that for a second. I mean, I won't ever quit the game outright, and I'll still happily just play anyway and enjoy it for what it is, and focus on the good things about this game. But it's getting to a point where I feel like sooner or later I'm just not going to want to play current format Yu-Gi-Oh anymore. Just so much stuff has even happened over the last 8 years that have just left me feeling burnt out and disheartened and discouraged. So, like, even if you don't agree with me on anything I've said, at least try and understand the problem from my point of view. That's all I've got to say. I'm not quite sure what to call this video, but yeah. Thanks for watching anyway, stay safe, and I'll catch you guys later. See ya. Thank you very much for watching. Be sure to subscribe to the Dark Magician YouTube channel.